Hi, it's Kimberly. This is a synopsis of Chapter 3 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. It's by Sherilyn Cadle. This chapter is entitled Life-Changing Realities. I really enjoyed this chapter. The book starts to get a wee bit juicy here, but she doesn't get detailed enough for my liking. The author starts with how Shanann was selling Thrive and that Chris was a very big consumer of the products. In fact, it seems like he was ingesting more than the typical person, or maybe more than the recommended amount. Now I'm starting to see a pattern here of Chris being obsessive. If you'll remember, he obsessively prayed when he was young, begging for forgiveness over and over, be in the bathroom doing that. So to me, this means he was having intrusive and troubling thoughts at this time as a young boy. And I wonder if his parents were ever concerned or felt the need to get counseling or something like that for him. It seems like he just couldn't get enough of what he craved or was preoccupied with. I mean, he obsessed over his mistress. He obsessed over Thrive. And it seems like his intrusive and troubling thoughts started up again when he was starting to make his plan to annihilate his family. We now know that this wasn't a last-minute deal. He was planning this for a week, if not more. But anyway, Chris was taking so much of the Thrive products that it was interfering with his sleep. He'd sleep like 3 hours a night. His heart rate was going wild, so much to the point that apparently his Apple Watch thought he was exercising even when he wasn't. Mrs. Cadle talks of Shanann's success with Thrive and all the benefits they enjoyed as a result of Shanann doing so well with it. Chris was extremely supportive of her career, and it seems like he is still to this day very proud of her. She liked to appear that she was well off, I guess according to Chris, and Cadle gave a couple of examples of that in the book. And she talks about Chris's role of being the supportive husband in such a way that it helped her career. And that includes staying out of the way at times and minding everyone's children so the party and I mean the networking could go on. And the book gives Chris's version of events leading up to Shanann and the girls going to North Carolina. And it appears to me, and I could be wrong, that Chris is in a way blaming Shanann for the affair. And although Cadle stresses very much that this is not the case. Also, Chris did not ask Shanann to stay home instead of going to North Carolina. Seems like he always kept a closed mouth when it came to voicing his wants. But then again, it's not clear that that is what he wanted, that he wanted her to stay home. And this is when the affair was starting to ramp up. So he was probably like, bye. You know, they were starting to flirt more at this point, so he didn't ask her to stay. And Mrs. Cadle explains the timeline of Chris and NK taking their flirting to the next level. And to me, this was like the starting of the making of a perfect storm, if you will. Timing was everything. And so far, this chapter pleases me. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of new information, or at least some clarifications. I'm not talking huge revelations here. That's not the case. It's just a sentence here and a sentence there. But then again, like the last chapter, I just wish she would go into more depth. Everything is just like a glazing over or a summary. I feel like the month of June was very, very pivotal. That's when Shanann announced her pregnancy, and it just so happened to coincide with the same week that Chris and NK were flirting more. And it's just really a few sentences of describing everything. Of course, I don't know what the rest of the book holds. I'm just doing these videos as I'm reading the book. Like, I'm not reading the whole thing and then doing a video. I'm reading it one chapter at a time, doing a video. And one thing that was mentioned in this chapter, and I quote, "Bad things went on in Nikki's house," end quote. and Chris is ashamed of, and he refuses to speak about this. And I mean, what the hell? Oh my God, if I was writing this book, I would have just pestered the hell out of him. I would have threatened to tell his mother on him or something because I want to hear about this, and I know everybody else does too. But I don't know if she pressed him or not, but that's all we get. He's going to take it to his grave, so. And from what I gather, Nikki was the complete opposite of Shanann. And I'm wondering if some of this was purposely because apparently she was keeping up with Shanann's social media. Cadle even suggests at one point that Nikki may have been stalking, and that was her word, Shanann, at least online, if not in person. I'm like, what? This is huge. What made you say that? Is there proof? I mean, I want more. It was just like something she threw out there. Like maybe, I don't know if it's her thought or she knew or I don't know, but we don't get more detail on that. So it appears that the sex between NK and Chris was wild, which we all knew, and it seems like although he claimed to be in love, I think he was more in love with how he felt when he was with her and around her. It's like how he felt when he was with her. He was completely transfixed. And then she also, the author talks about Chris's love for NK in the past tense, which I thought was interesting because I thought it was still going on that he still loved her. I think it was in that Daily Mail article. Again, like the love was in the past tense and now it's gone. So, and apparently Chris never realized he was unhappy in his marriage to Shanann until he started the affair. And it's very interesting how Mrs. Cadle describes NK from Chris's point of view. I did like that. We're seeing a little bit of a side not presented before, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. And of course, I can't tell you everything in the book, but it's almost like NK is being blamed by Chris for the whole affair. And it sort of explains how Chris's thought process was changing. Are we to believe that Chris had absolutely no self-control? Like he's not a child? Yet it's very childish the way he was acting like an out-of-control teenager that throws a party when their parents go out of town, like, the way he acted when Shanann and the children left. So, and it's my belief that if you skip a stage in your life, you're doomed to repeat it at some point in your life. To me, you just can't skip certain stages. And remembering what I read from Cindy Watts' alleged book that was leaked, that Chris was almost perfection as a child and a teenager. She even said that in one of her interviews that Chris was a quote-unquote perfect teenager. So when Shanann and the kids went out of town and he was left alone, it's like he lost his freaking mind. And he did wild and kinky stuff from what is being suggested in the book, and I want all of the details, but we don't get them, at least not yet. It also says in this chapter that Nikki and her friends were involved in some, quote, dark things, unquote. And I can understand that probably didn't mix well with Chris's OCD tendencies and his tendency to allow people to lead him and tell him what to do. And I'm not suggesting that anyone told Chris Watts what to do. I am saying, though, that Chris Watts appears to have been quite impressionable, which we've seen that. And once more, I'm being pulled in by the chapter, but I want more. I want more details. Just when it's getting good, it's not in-depth enough for me. And Chris offers up some Bible verses to Mrs. Cadle to come to know the true Nikki. And that part made total sense. It's very telling. The way I see it, June is just briefly mentioned, but there's a hole kind of where July should go. It just gets skimmed over with some teasers, and I hope we get more in depth in the coming chapters. And the chapter ends with Chris traveling to North Carolina to reunite with his family, and they go on vacation to Myrtle Beach, and she touches on the letter that Chris wrote and left with his family that said to look at Shanann if he turned up dead. So it seems to me that Chris was playing off their anger over the whole Nutgate thing and the poor me, see what I have to live with type of thing. But I want to say the book is getting good. I hope it gets better. And the only thing is, I want the extended version of events, not condensed. So I'll end the video here. I'll pick up with chapter 4 in the next one, and thank you for listening.